Hey everyone, Dan at Bushcraft. Well, what you just saw and what you see now behind me is a weighted lever snare. And there's various ways to set this up. In my opinion, this is the easiest way to set it up. Basically, we'll get a little closer here and I'll try to give you an overview. But you have a Y stick hammered into the ground and a long lever setting in the Y stick, and it's balanced on top of another stick that's just sitting there on the ground with a weight on that end. So what I've done on that end is I've tied a rock for weight to the top, and then it is balanced on a stick. And I mean the slightest nudge and that thing's coming down. It is very sensitive. I deliberately made the noose in bright orange so that it could be seen on camera. But when I'm doing snares, my preferred is something like this, 24 gauge wire. This is just something I picked up off Amazon. 24 gauge is an ideal gauge for making snares, and then that way the animal can't chew through it, and when it tightens up around the neck, it's not coming back loose. But I've done this on camera before, and it is very, very hard to see. So I deliberately just made a noose in bright orange so that you guys could see it. We'll go over the features here in a minute. I want to show you guys something real briefly here. So I took a piece of this 24 gauge snare wire, and I'll show you how I would make a snare. I just take a little stick and see that I'm wrapping around the stick, but I'm leaving part of the wire stick up here, and I'll show you why in a minute. Oops, my trap just sprung. So that's how sensitive it is. You really have to find the right place to balance that so it won't just fall over like that. But let me make this first. So I'm winding, 5 or 6 times around this little stick. Actually, I did more like 7 or 8, but however many. And I've left a point. There's a point right here. And then I'm just going to break this stick. So I broke the stick so I can get the wire out. Oh, I forgot to twist it. Sorry, before I break the stick out, I was supposed to wind this around a couple times. Sorry about that. So I wind that around a couple times, then break the stick out. Then I just thread my other end of my snare wire, sorry guys, through there. And this little point, well, this is hard to see, I know, but there's a little point right here that I left on there. That is going to point down into the snare. So when the snare tightens up on the animal, that point actually sticks right down into, it's poking me in the finger right there, jabbing me in the finger. It actually pokes right down into the animal's skin, into his fur, and that just helps this cinch down even tighter. So you can see right there, that point is actually jammed into my finger, and that's, as he struggles, that point just works itself into his skin and makes this even harder to get out of. So an advantage like this, some size appropriate, I can make this a taller Y stick with more weight, so it's sitting up higher for rabbits. So I have a bigger snare, a taller Y stick, and then my lever is pulling my rabbit completely up off the ground, so the rabbit would be hanging. Say a rabbit comes through here, catches him around the neck. He's hanging entirely in the air with this around his neck, and that little point, like I said, just kind of gets caught up in his skin, and his fur pokes in and makes everything that much tighter so that he can't get loose. I have this set more for the size of squirrels. There's an abundance of squirrels running around out here, so make your trap size appropriate, your noose size appropriate. Again, I highly recommend just carrying a spool of snare wire in your survival kit or whatever. You can do these with cordage, but it's, you know, if an animal's able to get his teeth in there somehow and chew his way out, maybe somehow he's able to get his feet down to the ground and turn and start chewing. With the wire, you don't have to worry about that. So let's take a closer look at the features of this trap. Okay, let's start with the Y stick. So you need a Y stick, pound it into the ground, and you don't want it to be such a tight fit that your stick is, you know, literally you hammer your stick down in here, for example. You want there to be some play to go right and left. So on a normal Y stick, there would be. If you had a really tight fitting Y stick, then you'd probably want to get something that's a little looser, because this rock end is going to be balanced, and you want it to be able to fall and spring your rabbit or squirrel in the air. The other thing you want to do is, if you can see right here, I have a piece of bank line looped around and tied tightly to the top of the Y stick, because this lever, when it gets sprung, there's enough weight when that hits, that'll bounce right up out of the Y stick and land on the ground, and then your animal can get loose. You want him hanging in the air. So I have cordage around here, so see that? This cannot come up out of the Y stick because of the cordage holding it in place. So that's the setup for this part. And then you would, just using snare wire instead of bright orange cordage, you would get the appropriate length and the appropriate noose size. You know, am I after a rabbit? Am I after a squirrel? Am I after something smaller? Doing that with your wire, getting it, you know, 2 fingers off the ground, maybe for squirrels, 3 or 4 fingers for a rabbit. There's different things you can Google on that on the internet, but you know, for me, 2 fingers off the ground is a good height for squirrels, and 3 or 4 for rabbits. So you get this set. Now there's other options that you can do. I didn't do them on this, but just to mention it, you can funnel your animal in. So if you just want this to be a trail set, you find a place where the squirrels and rabbits are actively running through, have made some kind of a trail or something, and set this. But you can also make a baited funnel, which is going to be more effective. So put a rock on each side, a big rock or something on each side of this noose. So the animal has to come between the rocks, and then give him a reason to. Take a small stick, put some peanut butter on the end, and poke that into the ground. So, and then put a rock behind it. So the animal smells the peanut butter or whatever. If you're after rabbits, you might use some berries that you find. Whatever, something that's going to get off some smell, cause some attraction, and poke that into the ground, put a rock on each side and a rock behind. So the animal, in order to get access, has to come in through this to get to it. It's smelling something good. I want to see what it is. And it comes through, and this tightens up around the neck. Now, the second an animal feels something around the neck, and I mean, I think this holds true for everything from, you know, a mouse all the way up to a deer. You know, the second something tightens up around its neck, it panics. And when it panics, it jumps and it jerks and it runs and it goes forward and backward and sideways and panics and flips and does all kinds of things and to get loose. And as you saw, it takes almost nothing to spring this trap. So setup, let's see if you guys can see here. Setup is just a matter of balance, and it can be tricky. Your stick is just sitting loosely on the ground under the back end here. And you know that rock's not going to be perfectly balanced on the top most likely, so then you're going to have to play with it for a little bit and find a place where things will sit and not fall. And I'm having some, there we almost had it. So it's very sensitive, which on a windy day could be a disadvantage. So there I've got it balanced. And move you guys back around here a bit so you can see the both ends. So you've got, so the animal comes in for whatever reason, hopefully, maybe he's smelling some food, and it comes in, and as it comes in, the snare tightens up around the neck, and then just the slightest, and there it goes. So I would have a shorter noose on this. I got that a little big again for demonstration purposes, but I would have smaller noose made out of the snare wire closer to the ground, like so. And so the animal comes in, the snare wire tightens up around its neck, and so when this drops, it gets it up here, suspended in the air. And a longer lever, so if I pull this up this way, is going to take care of that problem. And so a squirrel is going to be airborne. And again, a taller Y stick is going to deal with the rabbit. So if I have a Y stick that's, say, another, 10 inches taller up here, it's going to be that much taller up here. That's going to get a rabbit up in the air because you want the back feet off the ground. You don't want the back feet to be able to touch the ground, so that, it's a painful way to go, but we're talking real survival. And so those are the key features anyway. You've got your rock tied to the end of your lever. You've got some cordage across your Y stick so that this stick can't fly out of it. Balancing is a big issue. You have your weight tied to the other end, and then you just have to find that balance point, get this adjusted to the right size and the right height. Again, you put a wall here, some bait here with a wall on the back, so the animal, maybe it wanders around, it's smelling, it knows something's in there, but the only way in is through that noose. So he comes in, comes through the noose, feels it tightens up around its body, and then panics, and that's what happens. Now it's suspended in the air. So just to finish up, guys, on this weighted lever snare, just balanced on a stick. I've seen other people make this where you have a toggle, but then there's more carving involved. You got to carve something for your toggle to slip into and to balance in. And this just makes, kind of like I did the improved Paiute deadfall video for you guys a little while back. It's just less parts to deal with. If all I've got to do is balance one end on a stick, and I don't need to make any kind of a toggle, I don't need to do any carving or anything. It's just one less moving part. So, and as you've seen, it's extremely sensitive, which is good and bad. It's good if you can get it on the right balance point, because it's going to just take the slightest movement from the animal once he's in there, just a little lunge forward or back, and he's going up. But on the other side of it, on a windy day, you may have to choose to carve, some type of a toggle like 2 Y sticks or 7-notch with another stick wedged in or something, because that is so sensitive that the wind itself can trigger that trap. And another advantage of it, depending on where you're at, so I've got tons of small fir and pine saplings around me that I can bend over for a spring snare. So that's great, quick and easy. The problem with those is the longer they set, the weaker the spring gets on them. So I pull a nice fir bough down and it's got tons of tension. If it sits there throughout the day and nothing gets in it till the evening, it is going to lose a lot of its spring, and it might not just pull that up quick enough. So the advantage of a weighted lever like this is that it's not going to lose any of its tension. If it sits there all day and all through the night, maybe I've got 4 or 5 of these set up around here. Each one made a little bait in it. Rabbits and squirrels are both active. Morning, they're moving around. I've been asleep and haven't disturbed anything through the night, so they've forgot about me. Tomorrow morning, they're up running around like crazy. This lever snare has lost none of its strength, none of its power, as where the bent trees, having set all night, would. And then again, another aspect of that is wintertime, freezing weather, bending that over and stuff in freezing cold weather, the sap inside in the tree, just making everything, tighten up and stuff, can cause it to lose some of its spring. So there are some advantages to knowing how to do the weighted lever snares. And I hope you like this one. Hope you'll try it out. Again, the bright orange was so that you guys could see it clearly, but I would definitely carry something like 24 gauge wire and make you some little snares using this. And again, just a little trick that I think helps is to leave a point right there. There's a point pointing down into the snare, so that point will get caught up in the fur and in the skin and just help basically impale the animal onto the snare and keep it from getting loose. Dan at Bushcraft, take care, everyone.